Portrait of Zimri by John Dryden. I'm Anusha Thennakoon. If you feel my educational videos on English literature are useful for your studies, subscribe my channel for more videos. Content of the presentation. Number 1, the poet John Dryden. Number 2, Absalom and Achitophel. Number 3, the real event behind the poem. Number 4, Portrait of Zimri analysis. Number 5, writing style. Number 6, themes. The poet John Dryden. John Dryden was an Augustan English poet, literary critic, translator, and playwright who was appointed England's first poet laureate in 1668. He was born in 1631 and he died in 1700. Absalom and Achitophel. Absalom and Achitophel is an allegorical mock heroic epic. It is considered as a widely celebrated satirical poem written by John Dryden. It was first published anonymously in 1681. It is a political satire concerning events that occurred during the reign of Charles II of England. The portrait of Zimri is an extract from the poem Absalom and Achitophel. Now let's pay our attention to the real event behind the poem. As King Charles II did not have a legitimate child for the throne, his brother James was suggested. But James was more inclined to Roman Catholicism and people were not in favor of that. However, King Charles II had an illegitimate child called John of Monmouth, Duke of Monmouth. As the king did not want his illegitimate son to be the king after him, the Duke of Monmouth began to rebel against his father King Charles II. However, since Dryden couldn't write about these events openly, he clothed them in a biblical story of events that took place in the reign of King David, which were of a parallel nature. Charles II becomes King David. Duke of Monmouth becomes Absalom. And Salisbury, Monmouth helpers, becomes Achitophel. So that Monmouth revolt against Charles II instigated by Salisbury is presented as Absalom's revolt against David instigated by Achitophel. And Duke of Buckingham, who was another co-worker of Monmouth, is presented as Zimri. As the poet was partial towards the King Charles II in his poem, he satirizes the Duke of Monmouth and his supporters. The poem consists of portraits of different characters, and here there is an explanation of the portrait of Zimri. Portrait of Zimri analysis. Let's try to understand the poem, analyzing it line by line. We'll take first two lines together. Some of their chiefs were princes of the land. In the first rank of these did Zimri stand. Some of the leaders of those who were against the government were royal princes. In their top leadership, Zimri held a place. Line number 3 and 4 together. A man so various that he seemed to be not one but all mankind's epitome. Zimri was a man of many talents and interests, so he was like an embodiment of all mankind. Line number 5. Stiff in opinions, always in the wrong. Zimri had very fixed opinions, which is a good quality. We should not be vague in our opinions. But problem with Zimri is that he is rigid with wrong opinions. Line number 6. Was everything by starts and nothing long. He tried to implement everything at the beginning, but he could not continue even a single one to the end. Line number 7 and 8 we'll take together. But in the course of one revolving moon was chemist, fiddler, statesman, and buffoon. Due to his above-mentioned nature, within the course of one lunar month, he held different professions such as a chemist, a violinist, a politician, and a fool of fools. Line number 9. Then all for women, painting, rhyming, drinking. As a fool, he gave all his time for flirting with women, painting, writing poetry, and heavily drinking. Line number 10. Besides 10,000 freaks that died in thinking. Zimri was a great companion of other fools who died by trying to think. Line number 11 and 12 we'll take together. Blessed madman who could every hour employ with something new to wish or to enjoy. Zimri is a man who cannot concentrate on one thing. Every hour his mind fills with a new idea and he keeps thinking on it. So he changes his concentration every hour. Line number 13. Railing and praising were his usual themes. As a habit, he does two things. That is, either to trouble someone or to praise someone. Line 14 and 15 together. And both to show his judgment in extremes, so over violent or over civil. Zimri cannot be at the center of both extremes. Always he is at one extreme. That is same regarding being arrogant and being polite. Line number 16. That every man with him was good or evil. Every man he associates falls into the category of good people or evil people. Number 17. In squandering wealth was his peculiar art. His unusual talent is wasting wealth. Line number 18. Nothing went unrewarded but desert. For everything he did, he was rewarded, but his reward was always a punishment. Line number 19 and 20 together. Beguiled by fools, whom still he found too late, he had his jest and they had his states. Zimri was fooled by those who were around him because he was a gullible character. By the time he discovered it, he was too late because all his property had been taken by them. What remained with him was only his jest. Line number 21 and 22 together. He laughed himself from court, then sought relief by forming parties but could never be chief. At King's Court too, Zimri behaved wrongly as a joker. And then he organized parties just to camouflage his mistakes. Even though he threw parties just to please others, he could never be the chief. Line number 23. For spite of him, the weight of business fell. Line number 23 is very interesting. It gives two contrasting occurrences. His body size and weight increased gradually, but the weight of his wealth fell down. Last three lines, line number 24, 25 and 26 are not directly about Zimri. They are connected with the remaining lines of the poem Absalom and Achitophel to denote meaning. Writing style. Using a dramatic language, the poet criticizes the character of Zimri, though it sounds like a praise. The poet ironically points out all the positive aspects of his character by describing him with a sense of positivity. The poet has used an effective sense of balance. Example was chemist, fiddler, statesman, and buffoon. In this line, there are four positions described by Dryden. Out of these four, three positions give positive impression. The last position, buffoon, which is negative, is more powerful than the three positive positions. Dryden's writing style is full of exaggeration, but it clearly shows the extremities of Zimri. Let's have a look at the themes in the extract, Portrait of Zimri. Number 1. A man must be rational and be guided by reason, as they have a greater social and moral responsibility towards others in the society. At the same time, the poem contains the idea that public figures should be guided by reason, as they have greater social and moral responsibility towards others in the society. Number 2. Underneath the poem, the poet high-spots characteristics such as simplicity, clarity, order, good sense, and decorum, which people were yearning to possess during Augustan era. We have come to the end of today's presentation. Thank you very much. We'll meet again once in an educational video like this.